context with me every time I'm going between providers. I'm seeing some nods over here, so I'm guessing you guys did something similar.
Yep, LibreChat was great. And for folks who haven't tried it, it's basically a harness. You can plug it across different models. It saves your context. You can save prompts. It's fantastic. And it's kind of plug and play for a lot of stuff. Yeah.
And it's how you, and like, it's how you can embed like your own chat interface, like in your applications, right? Or your websites. And that was the same thing, right? When I was playing around with it, I had some friends and I'm like, I don't want it to be the only one asking questions and getting information. I want you to share your context too. So threw a LibreChat into like our application, and that's how they were using it and going from there. So no, it's pretty awesome.
And you know what? That is exactly how I started with it. It was for my family, right? I see what's coming with AI, right? How it's going to impact everyone. I started to say, hey, how do I start sharing this with my family in a way that I can help them and they can help themselves through AI, but they're not the product, right? It goes back to the early days of search, where if it starts becoming free, then you're probably the product. You're not buying.
No, I love this, right? 'Cause I think we've all talked about already like different ways that we've experimented with some AI technology, right? Like I know personally, I have since moved off of LibreChat. It's just for me, I think there's another path there. But so Renee, like I'm kind of curious as we segue in, right? Because the whole point of what you're talking about today is, if you will, like it's the title is Refactor Your AI, Don't Set It, but it's really about how you have evolved your AI learnings and how you've evolved your AI systems. So why don't you tell us some more kind of about like your evolution from LibreChat and kind of where you are today and how you continue to iterate.
LibreChat's really where it started, and the whole concept of creating like a family AI. The first projects that I started to do really was, how do I start analyzing the LibreChat infrastructure, architecture, data that's going through it. So I created a Replit application that connected into the MongoDB backend for it, so I could start like visualizing different parts of it. As we start to hear more about OpenClaw, I think what was it, late February or mid-February is when we started to hear more about it. I think I started playing around with it. That was kind of that was my oh shit moment. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
You've already done it, man. There's no 7-second delay. Just keep it running.
It's live.
Send me the bill. So started off with a blank slate. We said, okay, how do I start making changes now in LibreChat from OpenClaw? Started using that. Got the $200 a day invoice from them as I was using Opus on it.
We call that the learning curve.
Yeah, it's a tuition.
It was a welcome to AI moment. I think we're also grappling with the costs. So went from there, started to go to Claude Code right after that, just because I'm like, okay, let's go to a subscription model, see how it pulls together. So I started just trying to create organization from that chaos and trying to look at it as a proof of concept to see, can I develop? I've been around developers my entire life, been around architects, but I've never been able to write in that language. So this was actually the first time I was able to start making changes and start to see changes in a Git repo, see it push into my different environments and start playing with it. So start to create more family-oriented aspects of LibreChat. So for example, creating like a household chat. So a place where a chat interface where both me and my wife could message in and and read the same answers instead of copy and pasting it back and forth. So that was that first like moment for me when I started to see, okay, this is a step change in my capabilities and also what I can do as I'll say like a technical worker.
Yeah, Sasha and we've hit on that point a lot, right? Of like, all these ideas that you've had over the last 10 or 15 years, maybe I shouldn't say you, maybe that I've had, all of a sudden now you can do more than just ideate. We didn't have the skills before, or we didn't have access to the right people, but now like through this, we can do it and we can do it quickly, right? I love this. Sash, what were you about to say, man?
I think one of the points you made, Renee, like how you ran LibreChat and you started exploring more and you wanted to kind of look a little bit more under the hood, and then you start playing around with Claude Code. That's great, right? That's kind of the journey I think Chris and I both have taken. And then it gets you to points where, oh, wow, I can build. And look, I can do this. And then you start building on top of that. which is fantastic. And from the looks of it, you've built a process which you kind of use to continue to grow your system with.
Exactly. That's consistently what I'm refactoring. So the foundation was actually first commands, right? It was really understanding where, if I was working on different work trees, or if I was working on different projects, where am I in each of those steps? Have I deployed it yet? Is it in development? I mean, I started off with using one terminal window, and at one point, I think I had like 6. I think I've scaled back to 3. I think that's like the sweet spot. But I've started to put in different commands to make sure, for example, like I could visualize what the interface will look like before we build it. I'm more security conscious than some, so I built a secrets command, which basically pipes the secret from BitWarden secrets directly into the environment, so it doesn't go into the chat logs of the agents.
Fantastic.
So different things that I picked up over my career that kind of helped with it. Probably in some ways I'm over engineering, but then in other ways, we'll probably find out in a couple of years that, I was probably on the right track for some of these things.
I think to jump in there, like, because I've had this same like internal thought, like, why am I doing all of this rigor for myself, right? But I think like this is how you start to build that at scale. You know what I mean? Like if we are going to take what we are doing and like appeal to leaders, business leaders, right? Like we're in sales, like we can't go to them and say like, hey, this is how we do it, right? And like talk about throwing API keys directly into chat. Like what you're doing is setting that foundation of how we market this, and how like not mass engineers, but like large organizations, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, how they are going to go to market with this. I think it's brilliant, man.
I
Exactly.
think it's one of the learnings there, I would say, is like you're orchestrating AI to do these things. You're over engineering the process itself, so the output that you get is closest to what you actually want it to be. So plus over engineering is fun. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, man.
It's constant experimentation. I look at it in a couple ways, right? We're building the tool to build, so Claude Code.
Yeah.
We're then building the processes that we need to get things where it is. Think of like shipping, deployment, and then you're also building your operational technology. So I think of like Hermes and OpenClaw more as your operational, always on technology, rather than Claude Code, which you turn it on to build. So now you're starting to make handoffs between those 3 processes, and then you're also trying to create the right tools within each. So it's amazing to see what others are doing. I've seen what Chris is doing with the Grove and how deep he's gone into some of the skills. I'm still trying to figure out what is my process, my journey across multiple applications. I've always been in mobile. So the first thing I built was an iOS mobile app, which honestly is probably some of the most fun I had, which also, I think hilariously enough, the building process of an iOS app is almost now as long as the approval process to get it on the store.
Yes. Approval is actually longer in certain cases. I built one too. I think one of the differences Chris and I we've talked about is I don't build with Claude Code. I build with Replit. Replit has Expo built in, so you can actually single click publish into the store. But you built it and it gets stuck at the approval process. But that's kind of awesome. So you use Claude Code to build. You've got the system set up with skills as well as a very phased process to build with. Now, you're obviously skills and agents both have equal place in the system.
Yeah, so I use both skills and agents. I now try to keep it with one orchestration agent that has that knows who to call if it's another sub agent. If it's another sub agent that has a skill. So, for example, I've created a council that I use for a lot of different functions. So the council will be used to look at a specific, we'll say, feature. It will look from a CISO perspective, a CPO, like Chief Product Officer perspective, Chief Technology, and basically I have like what I call like a co-founder. And those together will look at a problem, and my co-founder will go and look at all of the different recommendations and kind of cut it down to, okay, what do we need to do now? Because if not, you'll just get 100 different recommendations where not all of them are critical. The reason I build that, I'm actually going to call out this site's called a Good Night autonomous.
I have one too, man. I love it. I was smiling as I saw that.
I needed some team to review what was going on. I didn't just want to trust the process. I also wanted to use the benefits inherent with LLMs, where you can actually have it look at data and non-deterministically give feedback on it. So I was leaning into that to understand, is this a good process? And I'll say ultimately it is. That being said, all of my C-suite on the council are all Opus agents. So they're all quite competent, I'll say. But they've been very helpful in making sure that I get out a good product. Even when I'm not building with Claude Code, because I actually do use Replit as well, I'll use them to build out what the spec is.
What Renee, like what caused you to go in that direction, right? Because we were talking before we hopped on here about different approaches of, it seems like I have a more technical council, if you will, and you have a more people oriented council. Like what was the decision point for you when you evolved to this phase of like introducing this?
Honestly, I think it's my background of, if I think of systems, and I think a lot of us are systems builders, I think of it as people, process, and technology. I've always relied on others for the technical part. I have architects, team leads. I am almost always responsible for the process and the people. The process we've started defining, but the people in this, I'm all alone. So the council kind of was, I wouldn't say second brain, because a lot of these, crazy enough, they're better at me than a lot of these in a lot of these subjects than I am.
Yeah.
So I have to sometimes rely on them, but I have to review some of their answers and ultimately be accountable for what they deliver. But I think that was me adding the more people aspect back into this process as a solo builder.
I love it, man.
I think that's a great sort of, and it's funny, like all three of us have this version of a council. So my council is more sort of operational because I don't use it Claude Code to build. But if I have to decide on a spec for a feature or even strategy, I do a lot of kind of work on my business strategy, how to do outreach, figure out how to grow any one of the businesses. So I've got a 3-agent council which run Opus, and it's quite useful. It's quite surprising in many times, if you've probably noticed that as well. Like you said, a lot of these are probably educated in a lot of things than I am. But hey, we still have to be the human in the loop. And there's a lot that you kind of have to prune and maintain as well, is what we're kind of talking about. So how do you tell us something about sort of the processes you use to kind of keep growing the system, making sure context and processes are being followed as you wish? So what are some tips and tricks or hacks that you use?
Yeah, so at one point I was working with one repo, like not even a mono repo. It's just one repo, one project. I put kind of my other stuff on the back burner, which is where we're at here now at the one pipeline when I was building out the foundation. At one point I had to stop and start to measure. That's exactly kind of, Sash, what you're talking about here, where how do I make sure that it's working? I love this call out. Hold on. It's not on this document. But here, 17% TDD compliance. I was asking for 80%. After I put in the auditing, it actually said that it was only going to 17%. When I started to drill down,
and Renee, what is TDD, by the way?
Yeah. Test-driven development. So you'll hear a lot when we're talking about AI. It's both SDD, spec-driven development, and test-driven development. The difference between the two is they're not mutually exclusive, but spec-driven development means you think about the specifications of what you're going to do first, you document it out, and then you give that over to the agents. Then test-driven development means you start by going with your test cases. How am I going to ensure that this works? Then usually in parlance of our industry, the acceptance criteria are written out. And then you start developing against those. So at first, all the tests should be red because you shouldn't have anything developed. And then as you develop, they become green as they start passing. And then in my flow, that would be like during the build phase. And then during the review phase, we run all the tests, make sure that they're green. And if they're not, we run through them to fix any of those issues that come up.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I think that's sort of when you thought of the stop, measure, and then proceed.
Exactly.
And okay.
Yeah, we had like the process audit. I started also looking, doing more of a high level view of what is my actual process, because a lot of times I'd be modifying one specific area, and you start to see my agents kind of spike. It goes from like 10 agents to 16 to 22, and then I think I start to right size at 22. I'm sure if I go back, not all 22 of them are being used, and I could probably start to consolidate a bit. That's probably something that I would do as part of the refactor.
Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to see a drop there. So I would imagine that's pretty common, right? Like, hey, how can I just introduce more agents? And then you're like, wait a minute, like agents isn't really necessarily, more isn't always better to a point. And like, I know I've dropped over time. I'm going to guess, Sasha, you have as well. But it just, but I like where this is going. By the way, we're going to go over time. Like, we're at 4:20. I feel like we got a lot more to cover. Y'all good with that, fellas? We go a few more minutes.
I can do that.
Let's
and
do
I'll
it.
also speed it up a little bit. So as we go into tuning, right, which I assume, which I would suggest everyone go into, right, like start looking at measuring what you're trying to do, and go and put in hooks within your flows. So things that happen before or after you send a command, so that you can validate certain things happen. So for example, I tell it not to do, no, I'm drawing a blank here. For example, I tell it to do write tests as part of it. Before it could actually do any commits, it has to make sure that it has a 80% test coverage, for example. So sometimes I've had to make, exceptions, or just kind of more tests than needed to kind of get above that. Is it right or not? Well, sometimes it's 2 a.m. and I just want to go to sleep. So I want to push the commit before I go to bed.
Yeah, hooks. Like, I think where I found a lot of value in hooks is not just for myself, but like I created a Hermes agent for my girlfriend, and my girlfriend's name is Amanda. The agent's name is Ivy, and I had to eventually give Ivy a hook that's more or less like, hey, like when Amanda messages you something, because it's not like me as a builder or developer is interacting with this, like, I need you to actually validate what you're saying. I need you to like actually go and like check her state database from a prior session and actually look at that every time before you respond, right? Because in that scenario, with her like trying to view her as an end user, like I need you to be a little more confident in how you answer. This is going to be a good experience for her. Like, you're going to get shit wrong with me sometimes. There we go again. And I can deal with that, and she can too. But like, that was a big moment for me of like, I need to be using hooks more efficiently, right? Because you can, like you said, to your point, you can do them before you send a message. You can do it after you send a message, but right when you start a session, when you end a session, and I know there's more that I don't know, right?
It's actually a great way of kind of building branch processes from what's running, and then when a session starts or ends, you can hook up, and then you can do a lot of things with those. So you like all the monitoring, self-learning kind of mechanisms are very useful with hooks. And by the way, for folks, you can just look up Claude Code hooks and you'll find a lot of information.
Yeah. Another thing that I've done is I've created a skill that there are plenty of like Claude Code best practice repos. I've created a skill that pulls a lot of them together and then scans my repos and compares it to it and gives me suggestions to improve.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's like, I'm going to bet big on that concept as like scaling and becoming more native, right? Like whether it's self-learning skills, self-learning agents, like I've got one of the big agents in mind. I don't know if this is better to skill or an agent. Right now I have an agent. I call him my chief strategist. He's really just a future thinker, because I have a weekly automation of saying like, hey, go pull Microsoft. It's in the Microsoft realm. So go pull the Fabric product blog. Go pull the Foundry product blog. Go pull, Sasha, have your weekly from Neuro and your risk dispatch emails in there as well. And like every week, pull in new information. So you and you can update the various agents. And like, that's one of the people in my council. It's like, as I'm designing something and building something, like, is this going to be relevant in 3 months? Like, is Copilot going to just consume this capability and I'm building this like because I'm impatient, right? And I think there's that gray area, especially as like partners, right? Microsoft partners of build versus buy. And like, you almost have to build until it's there to solve that gap. But like, to your point, Renee, like, I think that is a massive bet on there has to be evolution of our skills. There has to be evolution of our agents. The same way that you're telling us here, there has to be evolution of our projects.
Yeah. Yep. And, I'm going to just kind of go through, I want to bring that a little bit further. I'm going to finish this off kind of just by saying like the last two phases of tuning and sustaining is really where I started to be able to experiment more with what I was creating, because I was confident in my process. But then I started to see all the different requirements that I would need to get a even better process. So now I'm kind of doing that refactor. But as I'm going through that refactor, one of the learnings that I had, I was very appreciative of Chris giving me access to some of his Git repos for his projects. And one of the things I did was actually do a compare between our two SDLC software development lifecycle pipelines and how we built our processes completely separately without talking, but converged on the same ideas.
And you read line by line of every one of the codes in my repo, right, to do this compare?
Yeah, someone definitely did. One of my representatives definitely read line by line.
Somebody did.
He, she, or it will remain nameless.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the council members actually did it. That's the beauty of it. Go for it.
One of my council members crashed reading it, but whatever.
Hey.
One of the things you mentioned, Rene, Chris and I talk about it all the time. You got to build the thing that builds the thing. And if you build the thing that builds the thing, and then you use your kind of very structured like management process of that system, you can build pretty much anything you want with it. And I think if you take that sort of analogy into the enterprise, we're talking about the build versus buy decision. I think the focus should be about building systems that can grow your processes, grow your systems. And, it can be literally anything. It's not just building software, but it could be literally used for anything.
I think, Sash, you're almost saying that we're eventually going to scale this to build the thing that builds the thing that builds the thing.
Yeah, you got to go one meta up all the time. You got to, and that's real, in my opinion, a big unlock in systems thinking and AI orchestration. Because also, like, if you ask us, how does all of this stuff under the hood work? I don't know, man. Ask my Claude.
Yeah.
But if you build the right processes in, there is enough sort of compliance, like just like Rene described, the TDD compliance thing. That's a great sort of step in that process to ensure that there's not sprawl, there's not a lot of crap going on, so on and so forth.
I don't need to know the line of code that gets written because I've built a system enough that I trust the output.
Yeah.
And are you guys ready for a hot take? Can Hittel handle a hot take?
We could be hot take in the loop, right? We could be rebranded depending on how great this is. So like the acronym of our show, Renee, is dependent on what you're about to say.
Okay, so my hot take on AI, where everyone is saying that, this is going to get rid of a lot of managers, it's going to get rid of a lot of developers. I think it's actually going to be the opposite, where a lot of the managers are actually going to be now creators again, because they're going to be able to build, but not just build, they'll be able to build the systems that they previously needed teams to build.
Yep.
So the people saying like, oh yeah, middle management's gone because we no longer need to, manage up and manage down through a large enterprise. I think that's potentially true in the way that maybe the communications will be automated, but the idea of what we're trying to build systematically could be clearer, and I think middle management will become more accountable for that growth.
We're gonna call these future middle managers, we're gonna call them Bill Russells. I don't know if either of y'all are basketball fans, right? But Bill Russell, notorious, won I think 11 NBA titles, but the last couple he won as a player coach for the Celtics.
There you go. So it makes a lot of sense, and I agree absolutely. The whole permissionless motto of how you can build with AI and how fast you can move if you're like thinking the right way, it allows for so much creativity. So I agree. Middle managers are going to build. ICs are going to shine. ICs are going to be gold. If you got high agency people in your company, hand them a Claude subscription, allow them permission to experiment and see what kind of shit comes out, man. And it's fantastic.
And I think on that note, right, because to your point, like, if you're not going to do that, like your top performers are going to be doing it anyway, right? And I think like that right there, like that's the shadow IT risk in the future is like the shadow IT of AI development, and I think it'll be more like anything with AI, right? There's a scale multiplier, and I think it will do the same effect on shadow IT output.
Yeah. And it's fantastic, Rene. I mean, it's quite inspiring to see, man. We've got another person who's tinkering along just like we are, because it felt like it was just me and Chris just talking about stuff we've been building.
What's crazy is that there's such an overlap in how we ended up working without even talking to each other. We all, like, even in the naming, right? We both start with scoping it. I call it design. Chris calls it plan. We then go into like an implementation phase. Mine uses a mix of test-driven development and spec-driven development. Say Chris does something similar. The PRs is the biggest difference, right? How Chris does it much more programmatically, whereas mine is LLMs who are reviewing it. And then also, as you can see here, like a 5-person council reviews it if it falls into their scope, and then they talk about it together. And then after that, it goes into a shipping the PR, so it actually goes into production. And then I put a retrospective, which the retrospective to me was always important within our people teams, so that we can look where we can improve. Now there's a retrospective list that comes out from it. Sometimes it's process related. Sometimes it's, hey, this is a small change that we need to make inside the development. But because I also have a automated process, these small, usually fixed or task-sized items, they actually happen in a cron job daily that kind of just fixes 3 items at a time. So I'm not introducing too much risk.
All right.
Which is why you see that I have like an implicit trust, and Chris has a much more detailed level of trust within his.
I mean, if I could have picked up my Claude Code agent and held it in my hands and threw his ass out the window of my 2nd floor house, like this would have happened several times, right? And like, because to your point, we've all done this. We've all had to iterate and build, and like, what's failing, and like, I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to supervise any of this. I don't want to have to type /scope or /plan. Like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, you just do it. I don't trust your ass yet, though. So like, I'm trying to think of how do I get there, right? And I think I'm going to be on. I would wager that I will be on T1 longer than I will be on T2 and T3 combined.
That makes sense. All right,
Yep.
supervise, yeah.
You know,
and that's kind of, you become the reviewers of the review, and then you just have to make sure that the review is set up to review properly.
wait, Sash,
And
did you just go from build the thing that builds to review the thing that reviews?
meta on meta, baby. That's how it is.
Man. All right. So honestly, this was we turned this into a whole 30-minute session today, and this might just be the norm. When we have guests on, we might just need to lift this up off of 15 minutes, because like, I subscribe to the mindset of why use 10 words when 100 work perfectly. And I'm not saying that y'all are verbose humans like I am, but we all get excited when we talk about this stuff, and with 3 people, this is fun.
I'm trying to be concise. It's very token intensive to be verbose now.
It is. That's a very good point.
I will probably have to lose this the hard way.
1 token too.
Yeah. Whisper Flow is on my list as well to check out, where I can speak and it will auto transcribe in any window, and that's when my token usage is really going to go through the roof.
Bro, once you flow, you'll never type.
I know. So Renee, this was awesome, man. For next week, I'm actually going to piggyback off of yours and go specifically into, like, to flash to the closing just for a second and then back, what I'm calling watchdogs for your personal AI. Well, I don't think you captured in there, but a whole like smoke and regression test system that we didn't talk about. So it's like, I'm going to go a deep dive into like that one particular area, how I evolved just that, and how, to your point, like when I'm building new things, because I have built new things that have destroyed my foundation in the past, how can I make sure that doesn't happen again? So give us one last lesson is kind of to tease that out for next week. What's one thing that you have done or recommend of specifically around like regression testing?
Validate your agent's work. So 1, set up automated testing, either with Playwright or honestly just ask your Claude Code for whatever type of build you're doing, what's the best framework to use and what tests you should do. Make sure that you're testing the 20% of use cases that you're using 80% of the time. And then the last piece is validate all the responses from the AI. So, and use an agent to also do that validation, but bring it back to hard-coded values that you can validate that are not just text files. So whether it's a database, whether it's an artifact, bring it back to something tangible that you can review.
I love it. Well, thanks for hopping on. Dude, I said it at the beginning. I think I'm gonna say it more confident. I think you will be our first repeat guest, man. What do you think? What do you think, Sash? Should we have him back?
Hey, man, we talked about refactoring, right? So in a few weeks, we'll see what else has changed in Renee's system, because it's an ever-evolving thing.
I'm looking next to have a mix of OpenClaw and Hermes and how to orchestrate between the two, because I'd like to have my always-on agent being able to call another learning skill. So OpenClaw,
right.
Call, and Kermi. So that's my next experiment. I'll tell you more about it next time.
Yeah. And Sash, I think for all the people in New York watching, dude, who's your barber?
Her name is Masha. She's in Brooklyn.
Masha in
Hold on,
Brooklyn,
Sash,
man.
you're in New York? Did you
I'm
know
in
there's
Brooklyn.
a huge feud between Montreal and New York about who has the better bagels?
Oh, really? Montreal has bagels? Come on, bro. We can't have that discussion here. Right
No, no,
now.
no, man. No, 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 no.
Okay.
Sorry, you
This
can't
isn't.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. This isn't breakfast in the loop. I'm trying to think of something better than that, but that's what you get, fellas.
No.
Enjoyed it. Sash, truly a pleasure as always. Renee, really, really appreciate you, man, taking
Thank
the time,
you.
walking us through this. Like, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see what AI generates for our YouTube shorts, because I have a feeling that your family AI is going to make it in. That's my bet.
Nice.
So,
Renee, super pleasure, man. Thank you for joining.
yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Looking forward to
Cheers.
the next one.